and Mike. Hey guys, welcome in. This is the Astro Primer for May 22nd to May 29th, and sorry about that mic issue. I've got to make sure that mic automatically turns on when I switch that camera. But here we are looking at Crater Lake for what's going on this week. Hopefully the audio is good. You guys who are in chat right now, give me the word if you guys see that the audio is too low. Last week it was pretty low, so I turned it up to about here. I'm hoping that's going to be pretty good volume, but gotta go back. Let's do Astro Primer. Let's just start over. This is the Astro Primer for May 22nd through May 29th, 2019. And I'm going over here to my IMAX screen, guys, as we talk about the Astro Primer for this week. And I'm going to be right here in Crater Lake. This is Crater Lake. This is the location that I have set up on my moon, and I'm going to double tap the center to go right now. Double tap the moon, and I went to the day right here, May 22nd. What's the moon looking like for letting us have Milky Way right now? Sounds good from Dave. Awesome. Thanks, Dave. And remember to hit that like button. It gets the channel recommended more. Thanks, John. I'm glad that you guys are willing to say that for me, since I'm so stoked about teaching, I forget sometimes about marketing. But here we go. Let's looking at tonight. Say you're finished with Milky Way Wednesday and you take off and you're around the same latitude of Crater Lake. You're going to have a Milky Way that comes up at 11:52, but this moon has already set, which is awesome. Let's see what happens. So tonight, up until midnight, it's looking like it's going to be okay, but okay, the moon rises at 1:21 a.m. So we have, what is that going to be? 11:52 all the way to 1:21. So we're looking at about an hour and a half of actual Milky Way window before the moon will rise and potentially light your foreground subject. So that's awesome. What's it going to be like towards the end of the week? Keep going, all the way through to May 29th. It looks like not until Wednesday, May 29th, is when the moon rise will happen at the end of visibility anyway. Basically, what's happening there, catch my breath because I'm going too fast without breathing. What's happening there basically is that the astro twilight is beginning at the exact same time the moon is rising. So we're looking at having our absolute perfectly open window of opportunity starting on the 29th. But throughout this week, as you saw, there's a lot of options. Man, there's a lot of options. You got hours and hours before the moon will rise and be completely out of the way. What about you guys in the south? I always do Australia. Let's go over to New Zealand today. I'm going to go over to... What's one of the places I love? Let's do Wellington, New Zealand, because that's where a buddy of mine and a hero, Mark G, lives near. I think he lives in Wellington, if not near. Hopefully I'm not mistaken. I haven't talked to him about that since the podcast, which was 2 years ago. So New Zealand, if you're in this area, what's it looking like for you today? The 22nd, you're going to have the moon rise on you as well, but you have an hour and a half. Actually, looks like hour and 10 minutes before visibility is ruined, and every night gets better all the way up until the moon's gonna always rise on your visibility, it looks like. So the way the visibility is happening in the southern hemisphere is it's going through the morning and it starts after midnight. They don't have a late night like 11:43 start like we do, at least in this area in New Zealand. So we're looking at after midnight. They have the moon in their way, but man, the moon doesn't get in their way for 8 hours. 8 hours. Visibility starts and it doesn't end until 3:38 p.m. Oh, that's crazy talk. That's crazy talk right there. I think these hours are messed up right now. I still got to double check on that because looking at this, the sunrise has happened at 1:35 p.m. and the galactic center visibility ended at 3:38. So that's nonsense. But basically, guys, everybody is experiencing the same thing for Milky Way this week where you have a better night every night, and starting tonight, you already have something good. So let's get back into Milky Way Wednesday. That's the Astro Primer for May 22nd through May 29th, 2019. And opener with me. Hey guys, welcome in. It's Wednesday and I'm ready for some Milky Way. I hope you guys are. I would say I'm ready, but I'm not going to go out. Next week, I'm looking at a calendar over there. Next week, we go out with our workshop. We've got Venkat back. Venkat, remember Kathy? Kathy and Nicole were with Venkat at the first ever Milky Way workshop down in Escalante. So we're loving the fact that Evenkot is back. And Nevada says, no clouds, or I guess no Milky Way because we have clouds all week. And Kirk says, I'm mowing the lawn, so you all have to type loudly. He's actually currently mowing the lawn over there as he watches the live feed. So thanks, guys, for joining me today. Thanks for joining me for Milky Way Wednesday. We're going to talk about something that if you've read the entire description, you're going to see how I have a rough feeling for this, the noise battle. And the reason why I feel like it's rough is because if you're going to go to someone who's been to an amazing place like Italy and says, hey, I want to go to Italy, tell me about it. And the thing you start asking is, what about the toilets? What about the toilets in Italy? Well, don't focus on the toilets. Don't focus on something that's so small and inconsequential. Focus on the beauty, the awesomeness. How do I capture the Milky Way core amazingly? How do I get out to an awesome foreground? Those are the questions you should ask. Like, how do I work around the moon? And when is the Milky Way actually up? Those questions get asked, but it's more often than not that I always hear a question about noise and how do you work with noise and what's your ISO and how do you deal with that kind of ISO? We just had the Nightscaper conference out there. Nightscaper conference with Royce Barrett was the first ever, and next year is going to be in Kanab, Utah. We're going to have it next year. I think the dates are set somewhere. It's in April. Or no, it's been moved to May. It's in May. So next May, look for that and join us. Uh-oh. Got my phone on the cord again. Cannot do that. It ruins everything. So remember, guys, with Milky Way Wednesday, let me know in the chat any questions that you have, and if they are, nice Star Wars shirt. Thanks, Kathy. I debated on putting on a NASA shirt again. I was like, I haven't shown this off much, and the black really is slimming. It's amazing. So chat over there. Make sure it's all caps if you have any questions that you want to make sure I don't miss. Last week, I missed a question. It was about apps. Sorry, man. And so hopefully other people can answer your question if I don't. And so if you guys are in the chat, help out others as much as you can because you've heard this before. So while I catch my breath, I want to show you guys something before I go into how do you deal with noise and how do you work with it, yada, yada, yada. This Milky Way. And I should pull up another browser window and show you guys the actual contest that's going on right now over at MilkyWayPhotographers.com. If you're a Milky Way photographer and you haven't joined us over there, please do. You're going to have fun looking at images and sharing your images, earning achievements, and making sure that other people know that, hey, I am nearly a master Milky Way photographer. I have 18 achievements. J. Aritia? I can never say that. J. Aritia snaps. I think it's something like that, Jay. And then Rhonda had been in second place until Jay took over. And we continue, more and more coming. So I hope you guys will join us over here. And Kirk has put up a contest right now to give away this shirt. The one that's behind me, but entirely out of focus back there. And you can see it on a dude right here. So if you guys want a f1.4 and be there, or f2.8 and be there, that one's also the 1.4. I think Kirk is partial to the f1.4, as most lenses are amazing if you're f1.4. You're an elite class if you have an f1.4 lens. But I like the f8 and be there similarity with f2.8 because f2.8, I've shot that a lot. In fact, some of the images I'm going to show you tonight are on an f2.8 lens, and so it's okay. Even though these images are not about being good, they're all about just having that f-stop or about having the noise in there. So checking it out, the contest, quickly, you just need to go on, upload a new photograph, not something that you've taken recently, but just any time, whatever. It could be 7 years ago, it could be now. Any Milky Way shot to your member gallery, just upload a new one, and make sure before you upload it that you make the file name May Giveaway. See this right here? May Giveaway. I don't want to look it up. Sorry, Apple. I want them to rename your image May Giveaway. So say you have it already named, Milky Way over Crater Lake, and that's all your name. Just add in front of it May Giveaway _ and do May, I guess, Kirk, you can answer this, f1.4 or die. No blue Milky Ways. All right, Roger Clark, you can hold back Hold back, Mary Beth. So in May, I guess I'll let you guys see that real quick so you can see what he's talking about. In May, Kirk, is it going to have to be a space? I mean, obviously, we're going to do underscore, right? May underscore giveaway. File name be that, at least something like that, even if it's all one word, just so that Kirk can find it and know that it's been included in the actual, I'm still working with F4. Good job, Teresa, making the most of it. Hey, JRT. Oh, that's what Jerry's is, JRT. You know, I was trying to think that it could be the words R and T, but that made no sense to me. JRT. That's not a full sentence. I didn't get what he's saying. That makes sense. His initials in phonetics, JRT. Snapshots. Or I guess, yeah, snapshots. So, back to the contest. If you guys get up an image, make sure you put in the name that and upload it with the limitations of the site. You know, don't do it larger than 2 megabytes. Dimensions less than 2,000 by 1,000, just so that we don't have very huge images taking up the entire database of our Milky Way core, MilkyWayPhotographers.com's website. That repository can't be huge. We want to make sure that that doesn't end up being huge, and get that out by May 31st, 2019, okay? On June 1st, Kirk is going to go through there and pick a lucky winner to get, once again, this shirt. Ba-boom. That could be you. That could be you. All right, let's get back to work. And I'm going to show you guys images. Images right here. I'm still mowing. Doesn't matter. Just may giveaway at the front, Kirk says. So just put it with an underscore, all one word, whatever it is, just may giveaway at front. All right. You know, I need like a half a minute, like intro between, or like a transition between every segment, because I need to catch my breath sometimes, like tonight. Let's all think about Milky Way together. Just want to close your eyes and picture the last awesome Milky Way you captured. Are you visualizing it? Take a few deep breaths, and then remember that you need to get back out there and go again and have another adventure. So let's look at these pictures. I'm going to go full-size thumbnails so that you guys can see these examples. And what I'm going to show you are just different ISOs that I've taken over the years. And I have lost all my 2016 images into another catalog, and they're not linked up. I don't know where the previews are. So I can't show you some of the very beginning ones that are actually good images, but very low ISO. So what I have here are some examples that I could find. And check out this one. This is where people start in Milky Way. Had to auto. So if you're looking at your image and you're out there for Milky Way and you take your first shot, I think many of us have done this. You might have changed your ISO, your seconds to 8 seconds. You maybe have changed your seconds to 30 seconds. And then you see this still. This is ISO 400. So you can see how dealing with something at ISO 400, you can kind of tell maybe there's a Milky Way in there, but it's very hard to see. And then you get up to ISO 1600 and you think, oh, I nailed it. Got it. I got it. It's perfect. Well, remember the histogram. Remember the histogram. It's like, remember the Alamo. Remember the Alamo, everybody. Let's go over here. And I am going to pull out, put another screen up, and just remind you about the histogram. In fact, I'm going to remind you about the histogram by looking at an image of the histogram because it'll be faster. This is the histogram you want. You don't want this one. You don't want a short one. Let me just duplicate that. Not send it out. I just want to duplicate it real quick. And I'm going to draw on it. So remember, you're going to sometimes run into a situation like this image where your histogram looks like that. Let's see, how big can I could stretch it, but I can't really make it bigger. Oh, and my image is up and over it. Let me move Aaron King out of the way here. I'm just completely gone for a moment, okay? Let's focus on it. Hashtag remember the histogram is what Mary Beth says. That's awesome. I gotta start that hashtag. Hey, actually, she's working on our Instagram, so Mary Beth, on-air meeting. Use that hashtag for a few images. That'd be awesome. So up here, if you guys can see it, I can magnify the screen. Don't do it, Aaron. You waste time. Up here, your histogram. You're gonna be dealing with this. Oh, I should also point out real quick, so those of you who are joining me so far and you've been here for 20 minutes already, I want to let you know that after I do this, I'm going to show you examples of using stacking and how they get rid of noise and where they get rid of noise. I'm going to show you an example I believe worked out in Starry Landscape Stacker. I realized I didn't have a good example, so I quickly made one and not sure. So I made one using the same example from Sequator, and this is a Mac, so I don't have Sequator. So stick with me. After these images, we're going to go into the stacking side. So if you're watching this on a replay, fast forward to the stacking part if that's what interests you. Now, it's not going to be a full introduction into how to stack. I'm sorry. That's coming in the future. But right now, this is just examples of how it works and why it's awesome. Okay, so here we go. And looks like I'm going to let that image go, Stanley. You have an image with a link. I'll go ahead. I trust Stanley. He's not going to put something up there that's going to be too bad. So looking at the histogram on the top right, you can see how it's extremely underexposed. It's underexposed like this. And so that histogram is more like that, right? Let's just give it the credit that it's due. It's really this. It has a separation. It has, let's see, I'll just draw this in real quick. It has the first peak of black in the black part of the luminosity histogram, but then it has the rest of the midtones showing up like this. So you end up with a histogram that's a little bit crunched. When you hear people say it looks crunchy, you crunch something on your histogram typically. You have something like this happening where your data is pulling over from a proper, well-exposed image to crunching one side or the other. And in this case, for Milky Way photography, we want to go to the midpoint, but we don't want to necessarily go as much far. We want to stay away from going too far, just because parts of the Milky Way will get overexposed at that spot. So we shoot for the midpoint. And this guy right here, that's just too much. Not what we want. So if you have this other image, let's check out what happens after 1600. Let's go to what I took right here in this location, same lens, same camera, at 3200. Now, people who have captured at 1600 after seeing just this, they thought, I got it. I can fix that in post. Well, I'm going to show you how it doesn't quite work in post. I'm going to show you how it can be worse than just capturing higher resolution. So we'll do something there in a sec. And then here's 6400. So watch my histogram, and I believe, let me go in the develop module to make sure that there aren't any changes to these. It's just an import, and this one's just an import. Okay, so this is a very stretched histogram, and does anyone know why? It's going to be a 30-second delay, so I'm going to answer it before you actually put out your guess. But the stretch is due to this. Look at how much light is on the foreground. There's a lot of midtones. Not only the midtones coming out of the sky, but also midtones here. And there's a little bit of a haze. Watch as I put dehaze down. Oh, it's right here. Bring the dehaze down, up. Let me use more dehaze. And you can see some of that histogram going to the left as all of it's focused now on that area. So this is a little more particulates in the air, plus we have a very visible foreground that's taking up a good chunk of my frame. And so that histogram's like that. If I was just on the Milky Way core, for instance, this image, my histogram is much different. And even if I brought this exposure down, as if I capture it on lower stops, I don't get the separation between black and sky. I really only have my Milky Way data, and that thing is stretching all over the middle. So looking at this image and the changes that happen from 3200 to 6400, we've got an exposure. Now, why couldn't I deal with 3200? In this case, it looks like it's stretched, but what's actually happening? Since you guys aren't seeing this perfectly, let me stretch this in. I'm going to make that smaller, and now you can kind of see it. See where this is ending? As I hover over, the blacks, the shadows, exposure, and over here. So it's showing the segments as I highlight. If I highlight the center, you can see how much the center is far away from that histogram. Look at that. So what we're dealing with is a histogram that looks like this. It's got the separation, and it's going up, but it's actually stopping here. It's probably not even that far over, honestly. It's like it's stopping here. I think I still gave it too much credit. I'm going to stop it here. Look at how there is a good gap between. That is the gap I'm trying to show off that's happening here. There's a pretty good gap between where all the information is. So even though it looks like, hey, I've got that separation between here, which is key. You want to get the separation here, as well as getting this hump as close as you can to the center. But there's a lot of difference between this space right here. Oh, gotta go over. This space right here. There's a lot of difference right here. So this gap, it's great. But then this separation is a cause of the problem. So Gordon guessed it. Gordon guessed it, light from the foreground. Exactly, exactly. Awesome. So then you deal with those histograms, they'll change for you as you have different scenarios of a scenario of having a light painted situation. If you're light painting and you have a ton of foreground all turned on, that histogram's hard to follow. So you want to follow your histogram with the lights off, capture the core, and then see where your settings need to be. Just get this. Oh, did I accidentally stop streaming? Let's see. Oh, you know what? Okay, let's see if it comes back. We're going to hang for a second. And we're back. Okay, you guys, I don't know how much you missed in that change, because what occurred was here is, let me just show you behind the scenes right here. This, let me go to studio mode so you'll see both. IMAX screen, transition. So this is what you're seeing. You're seeing my screen over here. And I suppose that I had this screen active when I switched cameras and then didn't click on this other part of the screen right here. And when I hit spacebar or I hit the left arrow key, it triggered stop streaming. So sorry about that. Whew. It buffered for a sec and then disappeared. But luckily, you guys are all still with me. I have all of you back, and so we're solid. Aaron had a famous moment, if you were part of the Eric Benedetti workshop, where I actually did a complete error of hitting the red button on something. Oh, it was bad. It wasn't your internet, it was me. It was me. So going back to what I was saying, this histogram, as it changes from 3200 to 6400, that is the histogram you're looking for, and it's a little over right there just because of my foreground being lit so much by the terrain, the area. Possible light pollution from Wendover. I mean, it's just well lit and being visible as this terrain just is receiving the light very, very well. It's sand, and so I think that's helping. And so looking at these histograms, you can see how we're getting the right exposure and how it can look, and why when you do go up from these other settings, you think, oh no, I got a bunch of noise. So let's look at these. Let's look at these side by side. I'm going to go back to the library so I can side by side these guys. And let's look at, okay, let's look at the noise on the core. Let's go really zoomed in on the core. And what we're comparing right now on this screen is 6400, and on this screen is 3200. So when I say another ISO number, I never will, Kathy. I'll never live down that moment that I actually hit that red button that turned off the entire live stream. This side is going to be the number I change. So I'm going to go from 3200, and I'm going to change it on this side. Change it to 3200 to 1600, down to 400, and jump back and forth and compare these. So as you're looking at this over the internet, streaming on your computer, or rewatching it live or replay, it's probably not the easiest to see every little pattern that's happening, but I want you to see, here is 400. There's still noise. This 400, if I brought up some of the detail there, you would see the noise even though it's dark. You'd see what's happening on the sensor. And then you look over here. I'm sorry, I changed the entire option. You see over here on 1600, you start to see those noise patterns. Now, here are the stars, the colors of the stars. Watch the colors of the stars change. We're at 1600. Here's yellowish, kind of red showing up a little bit in there. Let's see. So 3200 compared to this color right here. Let's do this triangle of stars right there. 3200 versus 6400. Go to 1600 versus 6400 and down. So then the noise pattern, it seems almost softer, but you have a weird thing happening here. You've got some crazy sensor noise just trying to figure out what to do. And in that same location on the screen, it's got some more information. Look at this information right here, and let me change it. That goes away. It's hard to explain, but let me do it this way. There were these big blocks of digital data noise, and so it was basically creating what it could out of the image. It didn't have any more information to resolve, and so it did this for color, and it had this weird grid. Let's look back at it again. Let's look back at it again. You got this weird grid, and that's actually happening at 1600 ISO. So at 1600 ISO, I got some more particulates that are causing funkiness than, let's zoom out, than I was getting over here at 6400. Zoom in again. Oh yeah, I'm not going to find that section of stars again unless I am incredible at memorizing where the stars are. I think that's our triangle of orange and everything, but it's okay. It's not important. Let's go to the row of Fuki. We've got some really big stars and some colorful ones. Right here, you can see the difference between this has a bit of a yellow hint to it, while this is completely washed out white. And you're going to experience that with your stars and your brightest stars, especially your brightest stars. Let's look at some examples. Over on the 1600, I can see the brighter stars easier than 6400 because I have tons of stars around. So I'm going to grab some up here. Look at the difference between those two stars. Flared out, completely blown out versus a little bit more of color detail, which I wouldn't call it color detail. I would call that color distraction. You don't need the histogram anymore, so you can show me again. This is just sort of aberration happening from your lens. It's not actual color of the star, unlike down here where we are seeing some star colors. You see in star trails, you see those star colors. So side by side, all in all, when you look at the noise between, say, 1600 and 3200, okay, seems like it's gotten noisier because you have that grain. But as you look at the overall image and you zoom out, okay, I can resolve that that's the Milky Way far more than I could resolve it here. And detail that was up here is visible, where here it's just kind of lost. And I'm not going to get that detail back. That detail is just black smudges versus any form of detail information there. So let me check those out between 3200 and 6400, and then we'll move on. That's that dark area where I'm starting to see stars that I couldn't see before. Look at that same space. I think it actually changes the position on all of those because I've now moved in and zoomed out. So looking at this noise, dealing with the noise, worrying about the noise is just not as important as you might think. I'm going to show you a few other examples of higher ISO, and you can see where you're seeing noise. Then we're going to talk about stacking it. It's already 734, so let's go into those examples. Then we'll go into stacking and fixing where the noise actually is. Where is the noise that you should worry about? Well, let's look at these two images, and I'm going to make an edit to them. In fact, I'm going to do that. Yeah, I'm going to do that here, then go to the other images. So I'm going to go back to the screen, and we'll quickly do develop. And I'm going to make a change right here. I'm going to do some basic changes. I'm going to typically bring my exposure up a little bit. I bring my contrast way up. I do my lens profile correction. And this was, at this point, the Rokinon. So I'm going to pull down the Rokinon. And it's not the 14 millimeter, it's the 24 millimeter right there. So now I've got my profile corrected. I have the noise there. I have masking. I'm going to turn that all the way up so that there's no sharpening happening. And then I'm going to grab highlights down, shadows. In this case, shadows and blacks I deal with the foreground. I have nothing to worry about the foreground right now. Do I want to do anything with the whites? I kind of like seeing a little bit more white. Clarity, I'm not going to touch it. It's not necessary. Dehaze, maybe a little bit just to bring some like contrast out, but not much because I don't like crunching. See, look what happens with the dehaze, and look at the histogram. Let me move me again. Watch the histogram. Move that dehaze over. Crunch, 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 crunch. So that's why you might hear someone like Awesome Nick Page say it looks crunchy when you put the dehaze up. So it's crunching that. It's crunching that information. And so I don't want to do it too much. I just want a little bit. And a little bit can go a long way. I mean, look at this change. Okay, just a subtle change. It's a subtle change, but then it just brings out that Milky Way versus the sky a little bit more. So now with that change being made, and I didn't change anything on my shadows and highlights, but then I didn't have to because the foreground looked like that. Well, let's go ahead and sync these images up. I'm going to do a quick sync, and I'm going to just check all because I haven't done anything crazy. And now the other one has a sync. And so let's look at it with same work. Milky Way core. Let's look at it raw. This before, after. Okay, it's really kind of freaking out. Okay, before, after, before. So just subtle touches. Just you can see the air glow better. You can see the Milky Way. You can see the dust lanes up there. It's nothing really huge. It's happened. Well, let's look at the same edits done to this image. This is before. Come on. This is before it. And that's before. And now here's my change. Before, change. Before, change. So what do we do? How do we work with this? Why do people think and worry about noise so much? Because when they come into post-processing and they get an underexposed Milky Way and they try to bring out as much data as the other one, I'm going to bring my information up. I'm going to bring contrast in. I'm going to bring my shadows up and my blacks up to try and make that foreground match. So let's see these in comparison to each other now. I'm switching back and forth. Okay, very similar exposures. Very similar exposures. Now let's look at the noise. Let's look at this over here with the side-by-side that we can do. And let's look at the row of Fuki. That's not the noise. That's just loading. Okay, so now everything around the stars has a little bit more sharp look to it, and this is more flowing. Let's go down here to the core. Some of the detail in the core. Okay. If anything, I feel like on this side has a clarity slider a little high. This one feels a little softer, and that's because you have introduced some noise that wasn't there, or you had to bring in some data. Let's look at the horizon line. It's almost like I've done a sharpening layer here where I didn't do on this side. Let's look at the craziness that's happening down here. That is noisy. This is noisy. Let's look at them side by side, but maybe not zoomed in so much. Let's go foreground. I'm starting to see some sensor purpling, but you probably aren't right here. It's softer on this left side than the right, and I hope that's coming through on the video. It's possible that that is not. And good, stream is still good. I'm double checked on that right there. So as I look at these images side by side, I can see where the noise is, and I can see how when I brought up the 3200 to the ISO 6400 level, I was able to resolve some of the same quality, some of the same information, and a little difference in noise, but not terrible. I had to bring up my foreground a little bit more. And so that is what I want you guys to know. If there's nothing else you get out of this lesson, if there's nothing else that you think, it's going to be this. Where is the noise? Where is the noise? Ba-da-bum. That's what you have to worry about. Your ISO is going to do stuff more to the noise in the foreground than the sky. In the sky, you're dealing with a bunch of stars, and you have them showing up as little blues, little teals, little reds, little yellows, and white overblown stars. And so you're dealing with stars, and that gap in between is this. I mean, these are the right colors, but is this textured, noisy mess. That's the gap in between. And when you pull out, you don't see it as much. You don't pay attention to it, which is why some people fix noise issues with a panorama. And they pull out further from the stars, and they have this big image now. You don't notice that noise in between because you basically have just zoomed out, and you don't pay attention anymore to the little crunchy noise shapes that are happening in between the stars. But the foreground, oh man, the foreground. Now, you guys have something to thank with Adobe Lightroom that you probably never thought about, because in the default settings, in fact, I'll go to the develop tool real quick, and which one am I actually editing? I'm going to edit the noisiest one. You might not know it, but it's doing some noise reduction already, and you probably do know it, but when was the last time you checked it? So here we go. Over there, noise reduction luminance is down to 0, but color is up. Detail and smoothness is up. What happens if I take this color noise down from 25 to 0? Look at that. Let's even go closer. 8.1. That's the image. Let's go back and forth. Color noise reduction is off. It's on. It's off. It's on. So I'm going to leave it off on this image. I'm going to go back to the library and we're going to look at them side by side. And let's go XY. And everywhere I go on the screen is the same on the other screen. Look at that noise. That is noise. And that's the noise that's happening. And that noise is happening, you know, with a fix of slight change of 25. And that color noise is already gone. And everyone worries about noise. Everyone worries about the texture. But look at that color noise being reduced. Did that change the grain of this image? No, not really. All it did was get that color noise away. This is what our images look like before Lightroom pulls in your RAW and makes that adjustment. Can you believe it? Look at all the crazy color noise that's happening all around your image, and you don't even know it. When you look out from the distance, it kind of looks like this is fine, but you zoom in and you see that foreground. Man, that's hideous. That is just hideous. Let's look at an image that I've taken. Let's go to the develop panel. This is an image. This is one of my example images of, nope, go over here, please. This is dancehall rock, not modified, not raw edit. This is just completely raw, and here's, I think, some edits to it. Nope, it's just an import, and so this is raw as well. It's just a different ISO. ISO 12,800 versus this ISO of 6,400, and a different composition, as you can see. Well, if I take off the noise issues, let's go to the very bright parts. Yeah, there's a good example. Right here, let's take off the noise reduction. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so you can see it. Yowza. My rock is no longer red, orangish red. It is hideous, especially in the dark parts, in the shadowy parts. So when you look at these kind of images and you think about the noise, remember that you're actually getting a nice default noise reduction from Lightroom, and that is pretty fantastic. Other editors you use might have that, and other noise programs are doing things like this. So when you have something that's crazy dark, like this one, and I'm at ISO 8000. Why am I at ISO 8000? I wanted to get me a good histogram. Look at that histogram up there that you can't see underneath me. There's a good histogram right there. No light painting, no nothing. So it's almost perfect. It's a perfect example of reaching the center and going up, having a hump, and separating from there. You got lots of information and lots of noise down here. Well, how can you fix that? What if you hate the noise? What if, and now we're going into the stacking, what if you have an image like this one that I will pull up in the background while you guys are looking at me? So if you guys have any questions, hit me up here. Just know that the noise in the foreground is going to be the worst. Going to be the worst compared to what happens in your sky. The noise between the stars and how that handles is going to be something you'll notice different here in my example. And so for sake of time, I am just going to show you the sequator comparison side by side. And let's go full screen and make sure that this is buffered because it's a TIFF file, so it's very large. Oh, it's not going to go full screen. I have to go down. Let's do this. Okay, here's the finished. And okay. Awesome. I'm getting it. It's updated. It's good to go. I'm going to stretch this window as big as I can. And that's the full screen too. Perfect. Okay. All right. Jumping in. Guys, check this out. This is an image that was taken by my buddy over in the Dead Horse Point. My buddy's Ernie. He might even be on with us right now. Ryan Luna's having a comment that I want to add on here. I'm going to say it. One single reason I track and stack for noise-free images for printing large. So in the situation of working with printing is that you're going to want to make it, if you make it huge, like he's saying, printing large, you're going to worry about that noise. You're going to make sure you fix it and mediate, like go and fix it a little bit. Now, Ryan Luna has some awesome images where he's tracked for the sky to keep the color because of shutter. Got long shutter showing all the color and detail of the Milky Way without any pinpoint star trailing. Then he also does stacking on top of his tracking just so that he can mitigate the noise. Because the noise that happens, the grain, let's call it the grain of your sensor, the grain that's on your camera body is causing this. And when you deal with darker contrast, like a low contrast part of the sky, dark part of the sky, you see that grain, you see that noise pattern that is your sensor. And if you print it out really large and you want to show it up on a screen, that can look really distracting and hideous. And so you do hate that, but that's something that not all of us are doing. And yes, I'm listening. So Ernie's here. Awesome. So he's got that shot. So then when you're talking about great side benefit is increased color saturation and smoother color gradients. So as it transitions between points of color, you get a smoother gradient. So a nice transition between them, as well as, he says, color saturation. And you're going to see that here in this image from Ernie. And so here's a shot. I'll go back to it. Out on Dead Horse Point, you got the path right here, and it's going out to this spot. And this nice leading line right up to the core, and then a beautiful sky. Well, let's see. Will you let me? Probably not, but you guys are probably getting a good view. Let's see. Let me open this up with an app that I can zoom in, because I think you guys will appreciate it if I open it up in an app that you can zoom in. In fact, I can do this. I can go ahead and import it into this. So let's just go to my library and do a quick import of those two images. So, creative users and projects, production, go down to video content, and don't start loading up everything yet. We'll hold on for a second. Astrophotog, Milky Way noise. Okay, perfect. And we're going to open up not that one and not this one. Actually, yeah, I think I will, just because that's the Starry Landscape Stacker one that came out as an example. From here, I can actually show you guys a side-by-side, and it's going to be nice and easy. So first, we're going to start off with, looks like that is Ernie's image. Before, there's the after, and this is Starry Landscape Stacker's version. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and XY this, and you're going to see now this image, when I zoom in, this before, don't XY it yet, don't XY it yet. This is what you were seeing in my other images. Dots, noise, grain. I like calling it grain because, you know what, it's okay that some grain exists. But in this case, you know, in this foreground, I don't know how much grain I want in the foreground. Let me do 1. 4 is probably too much. 4, 1, do 3, 1. Okay, all right. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. You can see how there's detail that's happening here in the foreground, but if you're noticing it like I am, there's little green, yellowish, and magenta color spots that are happening all throughout it. And the detail on this fence and the path is kind of getting lost, as between here, there's a lot of grain, and you're probably not seeing it as well as it is on my screen, so let me zoom in. Try and tell me where the beginning of that fence post is and the end. It's all just one grain. So this is pretty horrible, even though the Milky Way is nice. And so in this situation, if you don't shoot for a longer exposure of the foreground and do a mask and connect them, you're going to run into this kind of noise. And how can you mediate it? If you have a PC, Sequator. If you have a Mac, Starry Landscape Stacker. And now let's look at the X and Y. This first is, let's go over here on the left and change this to that side. Okay, this is Sequator's outcome. This is Sequator's difference. And I'm hoping, let me change this setting to 2:1. I'm going to change this zoom in to 2:1. I'm hoping that you guys can see it nice and well through the video. Can you guys see it already? Let's go in even closer. So context is gone, detail. This is 10 images that Ernie has captured. And then right here is what Landscape Stacker created. And I'm looking now at that horizon, that Landscape Stacker, Sequator added in a mask and then masked around the stars. So you see a little bit of funkiness as it's taking care of what's happening there, but you get an idea of how it's fixing the noise and what kind of overlay it's giving to just smooth it out like butter. When you zoom out and you look at the detail, if it's possible that you guys can even see it like I can see it, you can see how no longer do you have a distraction of what's happening right here on the path leading up to the Milky Way. You're only seeing the scene that leads to the Milky Way. And you're not paying any attention to what's happening down here in that corner noise that you had, that weird sensor that was happening on this edge. All of that is mitigated and gone. All of that's gone. Does anyone else notice the other bonus? Look at the stack and look at what's happening in the main image. Is there something else gone that happened just by virtue of the stack? Think you guys can figure it out? Write it in there. So looking at the Milky Way core, let's look at some of the detail up there. Look at what happened in the sky. It's nice, and let's go to a corner. Let's go to a really noisy corner. Look at the noisy corner. You got a little bit of color here, those stars, the star trailing that happens as it stretches on the end of the lens, because this is a 12 millimeter fisheye that has been corrected with lens profile. So you can see how much it stretches on the edge there. And man, that is buttery looking. And so do you love the texture of the sky? Do you want more grain, or do you love this? Because I fully understand where people love this. Now, when I see this on the sky, I think, oh, it's kind of made my image look like it's out of focus. But it's not out of focus. You can see how it is on the left side, plenty of focus, but on the right side, has that little blur to it. And so what if I didn't enjoy that? Aha, exactly. Gordon and Andy both guessed it. It's the plane trails. Over here in the bottom, you can see in the pre-stack, that trail existed, but in the stack, because it's a median filter, it just takes everything that matches and nothing that doesn't, and so it just melts that plane away. So if you like the idea of stacking and you want to use sequator and something, you can do that and also get rid of having to go into Photoshop and do any of the trailing and fixing those, because they go away for you. They go away for you. So looking at the sky, look at the color gradient that we're seeing in the saturation. See this orange that's happening here? Saturation is a little bit amplified on the image with the stack. And the transition between them as they kind of smooth between there looks great. In fact, I didn't see as much orange up here in the noise as I do now, and it goes into green right here. You can see that color that Ryan's talking about. So imagine you didn't want some of this detail in the core to go away. Some of this, almost sandy texture, which I enjoy. Maybe you wanted to paint it back. You can use a mask, and then you can paint back some of this layer as it's, perfectly one for one matching as it goes. So in order to understand how this happened, oh, my battery is dead. Looks like the iPad is over. Let's not use that. So if you're looking over here, you're going to see what happened. Here's the before stack 10 images. And all that we did is we went in, you're welcome, or Gordon said, welcome to Brian. Awesome. You're looking at this image, and he processed it, lens profile corrected it, did any Milky Way post-processing that he wanted to do, and made those changes on all of the images. These are all TIFFs, so they'll take a sec to load up. But you can see how if I load a few of them, I can probably jump back and forth after this. You can see how the sky is moving. Oh, nope, it's only remembering 2 at a time because it's kind of a big image. I'll just do 2. Do and do. So you can see the sky changing, the light changing as you have some light in the background with some people with lights or headlamps or headlights for their car. That's moving across the sky. He's captured 10 images one after another, and you have to capture different images. You have to do that so that there's different noise patterns to use a median filter and connect them. If they're the exact same noise pattern, they won't. We have 5 minutes left in the time. Let's go ahead and finish this. Andy says, other than stacking, in fact, I'll show you his question while I say it. Other than stacking, have you had any success with third-party noise reduction software? You're talking to the wrong person, because I just don't care about this noise. I really don't. I haven't made any attempt to fix it on any of my images. I use that 25 color noise filter, noise reduction that happens with Lightroom, and that's it. And so People have had success with, Color Effects, not Color Effects Pro, it's the Nik collection, and it's the denoise, I think it's called, and other apps. And so they've had success with it, and there's no reason to not use them and try them out, because stacking does it for you. But you can also use those if you'd like. But you can see what I'm talking about with the differences in stacking, as your image has now just changed ever so slightly, just a little bit smoother, areas that were crisp. And so you have this smoothness, and then you add another denoiser on it. I wouldn't stack and do a denoiser. I would do one or the other. And Kirk just says he just tried Topaz AI, and it seems good. I heard good things about Topaz as well. I haven't used it myself, and so I won't be able to tell you guys whether I'd recommend it. So these 10 images already post-processed, they get pulled into Sequator, and then you make sure you mask the sky out and tell it where to go. Starry Landscape Stacker is this one. And all I did was do the same thing, where I assigned the sky, told it to go, and we should look at the comparison. Where did our Lightroom go? Lightroom is gone. Oh, there it is. Something added a frame in between. But let's go ahead and check out Starry Landscape Stacker. Let's compare the noise here. How did it handle it? A little different. It's a lot less just smoothed out. I like some of the things that it's done there. Gets rid of the plain trails just as much, and the noise in the black, I think there's just a level of grain that's a little bit there in this one, and most likely based on my quick settings. But you can see how it really helps and brings out this part of the image very well, and I do love it. If you're expecting that the detail in your Milky Way will change on stacking, don't. Just know that anything dark that's like, okay, here's a little bit of a gray, then here's a little bit of a gray on a little gray, then a little gray on top of a little gray, and it becomes a little bit more and more dark, your dust lanes will gain a little bit more of detail. I can show you that comparison here when I show you the before and after. So here's the TIFF of before, here's the TIFF after. So this is a single image versus the stacked image, and you really can only subtly tell the difference in the black parts of the core showing up. And so don't necessarily stack and hope that the Milky Way core will dodge and burn itself out of blending in with the stars behind it. That's not what you're going to do with this. That's not the goal. The goal is to get that buttery cream, noise reduced image. So if you're thinking, all right, well, I would like to be like Aaron and not do any noise reduction, but I also don't like the idea of this noise that I'm seeing. Am I going to be okay without it? Am I going to be okay without it? Well, I had recently done a panorama using a very long shutter, 1 second, and one of them was 84 seconds. And this is not noise reduced. In fact, this is just the preview. And you can see that it's got plenty of that grain all over the darker contrasty areas of my image. Plenty of it happening. But even with that 1 minute exposure at ISO 8000, this is how bad the noise is. This is how brutally terrible the noise ended up being. I mean, I'm not really complaining. I don't know anyone who would necessarily complain about this, because it turns out well, even without sometimes. So let's look at the absolute final of the image, completely noise reduction free. And even at my stitches, where I have put down the mask between the sky and the foreground, you're going to see some of the flaws. Oh, look, a meteor that I kept in there. A meteor? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a meteor. You can see my flaws right here. A little bit of halo action right there. But that doesn't matter. Ooh, pull out. Pull. Oh, I froze my computer a little bit. There we go. I probably had a lack of a signal for a second there. Computer froze as I was doing too much in the background. But, guys, the images can look fantastic. It really can. So if you're asking me questions as a beginner about Milky photography and you've never even captured an image yet with your own camera, don't worry about noise. Don't ask me about noise. Worry about solely exposure. Get your right settings and expose for that Milky Way. Get as many stars as you can. You want to see this on your image. If you don't and you see that 1600, 3200 version of the sky, go higher, bring it higher. Then go back to your computer, see how it looks, see how it bugs you, and make a decision then. I can't tell you how bad your color sensor noise will be. I can't tell you if you're going to be like a buddy of mine. It was Rob, Bob or Robert. I think he went by Rob. Sorry, Rob. I'm pretty sure I'm saying it wrong. But Rob was out with us in Las Vegas, and he had a camera that just is very old. And we found, even when we got a proper exposure with the Milky Way, it introduced so much crazy sensor noise that it was, this is cool, but I recommend you get a new camera. It was that kind of situation. It was that bad. So it can't always be that no worries, just forget about noise. Sometimes your camera sensor will be really crazy bad, or it's old and had many shutter actuations. And so maybe it's just broken, water damage, who knows? There's other reasons you might not like how it looks, and so just capture the image and then worry about it. Capture the image and then worry about it. And like Stanley just said, learn the basics, master the basics, then learn the advanced stuff, then worry about things later. If you're thinking you're worried about noise and you want more detail and color in your sky, you're talking about the wrong thing. A denoise stack is not going to bring your color and detail on the screen as much. Tracking is going to do the best for bringing more detail in the Milky Way and color out of the sky than anything else. You're going to see the air glow and everything amazingly with that tracker. Then you can worry about noise again and stack if you want to. But man, stacking and tracking, you're out there for one composition, and by the time that Milky Way sets, you've only gotten one option. And Jonathan Goldie says, such as there's 3 2-stack images used to make the pano. And so when you track a sky, say for 5 minutes, you would stack 2 to 5 minute exposures, say for a pano, such as there's 3 or 2-stack images used to make that pano. So basically he'll track and then do 2 or 3 layers of stacking just to bring a little noise down. And honestly, just 2 images can be enough to make that change, make that good. And he just got an Ioptron Sky Guider. Nice, John. You're going to love that. And you're going to love doing any of those tracking because you'll get images that I can't dream of yet until I join you guys there. So, hey, thanks so much for joining me, guys, on Milky Way Wednesday. Remember to check out MilkyWayPhotographers.com and join us in that contest. Just any Milky Way image whatsoever that you have. This size on this shirt is large, but we can get extra large, double extra tiny. I don't know what size you are, but there's other options, female and male. So join it. Just get out there, put one image up, say May giveaway. There's only about a week left with a couple days, and so you don't have to be fighting too many people for that win. And so hopefully you'll get in there, put your images up. Doesn't matter if it's great, doesn't matter if it's perfect, it just matters that you put May giveaway on there. So thanks, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. And we're going to Reflection Canyon next week, John. Oh, I hate you, man. It is May, though. It might be too late for a really great Milky Way over that spot, but I can't wait to hear how it goes. John, make sure you come back here. And John Brown, great stream as usual. Thank you for that compliment. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining me. Guys, I'm Aaron King with Photog Adventures, and I'm stoked to have this every Wednesday. Join me again. Next week, it will not be live. It'll be a pre-recorded one, but I will have something up for you guys. So come back and check in. See you guys next Wednesday. Have a good one, and get out there and have a photog adventure of your own.